So let's begin the next standard, that is SA 402. Auditor's considerations relating to an entity that for which we are doing audit. Okay, auditor's considerations relating to an entity which is using service organization's services. Simply the standard heading is auditor's considerations relating to an entity using service organization. But actually what they are using, so we are doing audit of an entity and that entity is getting some services from another organization. That another organization is called a service organization. So what are our considerations? This is what the standard is dealing with it. Now immediately when you decode this particular the standard heading, if at all you logically interpret this heading, what's special in this? As a business organization, we buy so many services. Yes or no? We buy telecom service, we buy internet service, we buy audit services of some other, obviously we auditors are from different entity. We buy various other services that are necessary for the business. So, okay, so we buy services, we account them as purchase of services and all, and input tax will be there, that we will claim, and that GST, all that we will take care. So fine, what's special? What auditor has to consider in this? The point is, here they are talking about specifically those services which you are taking. Suppose I'm doing audit of an entity and that enterprise, that company, which is taking another organization's service related to an item of the financial statement. The service which we are taking from the other party, that is affecting one transaction, significant class of transaction, significant class of balance, that is affecting financial reporting. If you take those kinds of services, what auditor has to do? We know very well, as an auditor, what is our objective? Our objective is to give opinion whether financial statements are true and fair, whether they are prepared as per applicable framework or not. As a part of our audit, we will cover every aspect of the enterprise. We cover purchases, we cover depreciation, we cover payroll expenses, we cover remuneration to directors, we cover various other expenses. We audit revenue items, all revenue sources. We audit assets, we audit liabilities. So many we audit. What if one of the item of the expense, getting in which company is spending, which company is accounting, but that expenditure is not processed by the company. That expenditure, though company is only paying ultimately, company is only bearing it. The company where we are doing audit, it is only bearing. But the process behind that expenditure. So what is, see, for anything in a big companies and all, there will be processes. Just in your family, you imagine, if you want to buy something, some appliance at your home, there is a procedure that you follow, especially in middle class and lower middle class families or upper middle class families. They do discuss before they buy. Yes or no? Some sort of mechanism you're following to buy something. Obviously, imagine a multinational company having locations across India or across the world, getting it, at a particular branch, if they have to buy some machine, obviously there is a procedure. There is an authorization procedure. Getting the point? So just like that, the branch manager cannot go and buy whatever he needs. Whatever the branch needs, he cannot decide. So there is a procedure. There is a vendor selection process. There is a vendor approval process. Then there is a tenders invitation. Then we need to place the purchase order. Then inspection has to be done. There is a lots of procedure that is involved when an organization is spending money. Agreed or not? Same way, let us assume, look at this example. So I made this comprehensive example. Okay, let's understand this example. You will understand the standard. Why we are discussing SA 402, you will understand the best. Okay, best example to understand this entire 402 standard is payroll function outsourcing. Outsourcing payroll function. First of all, remember payroll and HR, human resource management, both are different. In HR, they interview the candidates and they do screening test, they do background check, everything, and finally they select the candidate, send him the offer letter. Once he accepted, the candidate will be recruited by the company as an employee of the company. The moment the candidate got recruited, then after his everything, his monthly salary, leaves, attendance, time sheets, everything will be taken care by payroll department. Payroll department will not interact before the candidate joined the company. After once the candidate joined the company, then he will have to interact with the payroll department. Getting the point? Again, at the time of, suppose if the candidate want promotion, suppose the candidate want to resign, he will communicate with HR. But the candidate related complete finance matters, payroll department will handle. So payroll takes care of finance related, to employees, complete finance related to employees. Getting it? Monthly salary, what is TDS, what is provident fund to be deducted, all that complete things they will take, the payroll department will take. But today in many organizations, what they are doing is payroll function is completely clerical function. It does not require much of superficial, like super fluent, the intelligent people, and all that much is not required. Those who are having decent arithmetical calculations, those who understand the process of payroll and all, they can handle it. But today what happened, there is a company called ADP Incorporation. Yeah, that's a real company, ADP, which is very famous. Okay, they have branches in India, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Mumbai. They have many locations within India also. ADP offices were there. ADP full form, that company name is ADP Incorporation. Its full form is Automated Data Processing. So that's what the full form of this company. So it's a company which is based in US, which is one of the world's largest company, where they provide complete human resource management services, payroll, everything. They provide services related to complete. So what this company is doing, suppose, let us understand, we are an audit firm called BSR & Co. Our audit firm is BSR & Co. Chartered Accountants. It's nothing but KPMG firm, network firm. Getting it? So there is a firm, right, KPMG Big Four. So one of the network firm is BSR & Co. So we are BSR & Co. Let us assume. And we were appointed as an auditor for a company called Tata Consultancy Services, having more than 5 lakh employees. Now, to these 5 lakh employees, every month, Tata Consultancy Services has to process the payroll. So what is there in the payroll? What are the activities that are involved in payroll? Attendance, time sheets, attendance. First, employee attendance have to be taken. Then his salary has to be calculated with reference to agreement entered with him. Getting it? Then we need to deduct a TDS, provident fund, state insurance, any other deductions, gratuity, like that, all that we should deduct. Then final amount, whatever is there, that we need to disburse. And you know what? Tata Consultancy Services do not want to keep this headache with them. So what they did, this entire payroll functions, they outsourced to ADP Incorporation. They have outsourced to ADP. Typically speaking, Tata Consultancy Services do not have a payroll division at all. They don't have payroll staff. They don't have payroll department itself is not there. Entire payroll activity is outsourced to ADP. So this ADP Incorporation do make attendance, like do check attendance, time sheets. They do calculation based on the employee agreements and all. They do reduce what are all the statutory compliances. See, one of the main reason why payroll is outsourced to exclusive payroll companies. See, ADP Incorporation is a payroll processing company. Their business itself is provide payroll services to various clients. Like TCS, ADP Incorporation have many clients. So in the market, more than 100 big multinational companies, their entire payroll, my company has to process. Getting it? ADP Incorporation, in the recent annual report, what they told, this company has processed 45 million plus people's related salaries, which means 4.5 crore related number of persons' salaries were processed by ADP. Imagine the size, 4.5 crore employees. These employees were belonging to hundreds of companies. So these companies, the entire payrolls is processed by ADP because they're experts. I'll tell you why especially payroll function is so important. Why payroll function is such a hectic task, I will tell you. Though it is arithmetically easy, technically easy, but it is bit hectic. Why it is hectic, I'll tell you. Just a minute. For the interruption. So why it is hectic, I'll tell you. Just imagine Tata Consultancy itself. This company is having employees who are more than 5 lakh. And you know what? These employees are not just from India, within India. These employees are from many countries. So the Tata Consultancy is having employees across various countries. Getting the point? And remember, tax withholding laws, TDS. See, we deducted TDS, we applied TDS under income tax law. Now, when Tata Consultancy is deciding about tedious calculation of these employees. Out of these 5 lakh, some 10,000 employees are belonging to some 50 plus countries. And all these 50 countries will have different residential status norms, all that. Correct? Now, so out of them, some 10,000 employees, Tata Consultancy Payroll Department has to decide their residential status. They have to decide the tax related provisions. They need to study DTA arrangements, all that, and accordingly apply tax reduction under Indian income tax law. I hope you are able to visualize what I am trying to do. Now tell me, if Tata Consultancy maintain a payroll department, how many of these staff members have that knowledge to process these payrolls accurately in compliance with laws and regulations? Obviously, there is a high possibility that they will fail. So what they did, they approached one company called ADP. This company, Tata Consultancy, approached ADP. ADP have a dedicated, very big team. In fact, this company business itself is processing payroll. So this company is having more than 10,000 employees, having knowledge of multiple jurisdictions, taxation laws, multiple statutory laws. So they know how to process payroll in compliance with laws and regulations. So that's why nowadays, many big companies are outsourcing payroll activities to payroll processing companies like ADP Incorporation. Got the point? Now. So entire payroll function is outsourced to ADP. I hope you understood now. Now what ADP is doing is, ADP is the one which is calculating entire salary, deductions, everything, and then finally, they are giving Tata Consultancy Services. Finally, every month they will send one amount. Sir, this month 5,000 crore salary. Yeah, Tata Motors will prepare 5,000 crore approval, transfer approval. That's it. Payroll salary will be transferred. But remember, entire computation, everything, complete background work is done by ADP Incorporation. I hope you are getting. Now we are doing audit of Tata Consultancy Services. In this Tata Consultancy Services, one of the major expenditure is salary expenditure. Okay, employee benefit expenses is one of the major expenditure for a software company. Obviously, for a software company, the only major expenditure is employee benefit expenses, and the annual employee benefit expenditure stood at 1 lakh crore. 1 lakh crore worth of employee benefit expenditure, which is huge, heavily significant. It's very, very significant for Tata Consultancy. Such a significant item. This entire 1 lakh crore worth of expenditure, ADP Incorporation is processing. So Tata Motors typically do not have any calculations. They don't do anything related to payroll. If at all Tata Motors is only doing, we know how to audit this 1 lakh crore, how this 1 lakh crore is arrived. We will check every month how many employees. We do all this checking in audit. But now the problem is entire payroll is outsourced to ADP Incorporation. So how as an auditor can check this payroll 1 lakh crore, which is a significant class of transaction in the financial statements? So how as an auditor should I check this? That's where SEA 402 comes into picture. So if you're doing audit of an entity that is using service organization related to services which affect significant class of transactions or balances or financial reporting process or accounting processes in the entity where you're doing audit, apply 402 procedure. That's enough. So what the standard is saying, okay, dear Mr. Auditor, I understood this situation now. Okay, I understood this situation very much. So very simple, you are doing audit of Tata Consultancy where they are having approximately 1 lakh crore worth of employee cost. This entire employee cost is processed by ADP Limited. Now if at all this entire 1 lakh crore is processed by the same company, you know how to verify background data, everything. But this is entirely processed by ADP. So what you did, you went, sir, so you want to verify, you are an auditor, so you don't want to leave. Okay, whoever process, doesn't matter. I want to verify entire computations. I want to verify everything. You want to verify. So you approached the ADP directly. You BSR and Co. You approached directly ADP Incorporation. You went to the ADP Incorporation. You introduced yourself that, sir, I'm an auditor of Tata Consultancy, which is one of your prestigious client. So we in the process of audit want to do payroll audit. Okay, so we heard that entire computations, entire controls, procedures, policies were implemented by you, designed by you. You only processed the entire payroll. Now I want to verify all the records, sir. Kindly support me. You went and asked the ADP company. Then immediately ADP company replied, Sir, sorry, it is not possible. I don't know whether you know SCA 402, whether you know SCA 3402. 3402. There is an interconnected standard for 402. I'll come back to it. Don't worry. So, ADP Incorporation immediately rejected this auditor's proposal. Sir, yes, what you said is right. Our prestigious client, Tata Consultancy. Okay, we are the one who processed that entire 1 lakh crore. Fine, I agree. But if you want to come and verify the processes and all that which we followed, of course, we have lots of records which we maintained for Tata Consultancy. For this particular client, for ADP, Tata Consultancy is client. So for Tata Consultancy, on behalf of Tata Consultancy, we have maintained so many records. But if you want to verify, it's not possible. Why? Sir, first of all, understand. For you, Tata Consultancy is an audit. You are an auditor of Tata Consultancy. Right now, you are doing only audit of Tata Consultancy. So you are coming and asking all this. This is fine. But remember, sir, I am having, like Tata Consultancy, I am having 150 companies. For 150 companies, for 150 plus companies, I am doing payroll process. Like you, remaining 149 company auditors are also coming and asking. Sir, they also want to come and check payroll records, everything. I am the ADP company management. You are the ADP company management. If all the clients, for whoever you are doing payroll processes, for whomever you are doing payroll processes, their auditors are coming and asking you, sir, we want to verify computation, all that, like 150, 200, 300 auditors. They are coming regularly to your office. Now tell me, will your work be interrupted or not? Obviously interrupted. So obviously ADP company cannot, because see, now tell me, ADP rejected this proposal of the Tata Consultancy auditor visiting their premises. They rejected, they opposed it. That is genuine. Why? Because for you, TCS is only one client for you. You are doing audit. But for me, TCS is 1 out of 200 clients I am having. So if you come tomorrow, remaining 199, 200 company auditors also, they will come and verify. So it is not possible for me to allow each and every client auditor. Whoever my clients were there, right? Whoever my users, user entities, we call them as what? User entity. From ADP Incorporation point of view, TCS is a user entity. ADP is a service organization which is providing payroll processing services. So this is service organization. We call this as what? Service organization. We call this TCS as user entity. If service organization started allowing auditors of user entities to come and verify records, the service organization can never work properly because it will interrupt every day. They will interrupt every day. Some auditor will come and verify. This ADP, for your information, is having more than 1,000 clients. I'm telling you, more than 1,000 clients. So tell me, is it possible for ADP? So they obviously oppose. Now these auditors were becoming furious. As a Tata Motors auditor, sir, Tata Consultancy auditor, sir, I want to verify payroll. The person whom you outsourced the payroll activity, he is not at all cooperating us, because if you want to verify, wait, your concern is also genuine. As an auditor of Tata, your concern is also genuine because you want to verify the payroll, whether it is true and fair, whether it is correctly accounted, whether nothing is omitted. You want to ensure that. And ADP concern is also genuine. So what? See, what do you want as an auditor of Tata Consultancy? What do you want? Tell me. You want to get a reasonable assurance, correct? On payroll activity. Whatever payroll, 1 lakh crore, whatever the entire thing is there, you want to get a reasonable assurance that the entire payroll has been processed correctly. That is what your objective. Yes, that's what my objective. For that reason only you want to come and verify. For that reason only I want to go and verify ADP records. Do one thing. ADP, they will appoint one. They will do one SOC audit. They will do one SOC audit. Systems and Organizations Controls Audit. What is it called as? SOC audit. In our entire standard, the word SOC is not used. I am using it for your understanding. In reality, what this audit is called as SOC. So this ADP, what they'll do is they will do SOC audit as for Standard on Assurance Engagement 3402. There is a standard called Assurance Engagement Standard 3402. Under that standard, this ADP company, they appoint one auditor. Not auditor of financial statements, understand. ADP company is appointing one auditor who will give assurance report on how I do payroll process. How I do payroll processing. How I do payroll processing. What systems I follow. What controls I follow. What systems I implemented. Getting the point. What policies and procedures I implemented as an ADP company. So entire and how they are operating effectively. My ADP company, which is processing various clients, getting it, payrolls related things, and all the clients are having their own auditors, and all the auditors are worried about how I am processing payroll, which is a genuine concern. To clarify all your concerns, my organization will get an audit of our systems, our procedures, our policies, our controls related to all clients related processes. So we are providing so many services to various clients, right? And all these services, we will get audit. We will do an audit of our system. Remember, I am an ADP company. Whether I do payroll process for Tata Consultancy or Reliance or somebody, I have some standard procedures and protocols which I follow. For each and every company, I will not have a customized payroll processing mechanism. For every company, it is same. Just the dates might be different. Just that computations might be slightly different. But substance over form. The overall concept of payroll process is same. So as an ADP company, I am expert in payroll processing. So I have certain procedures, standard protocol, standard procedures which I follow for every company. Whether my procedures are correct or not, whether the way we calculate payroll cost correct or not, whether the statutory compliances which we are complying for every of our client, is it complying or not? This is what every company auditor is worried, right? We will give an assurance report. We will give you an assurance report. So we will appoint an assurance auditor. That fellow will come. He will study all our control systems, everything, everything, objectives, everything he will see. He will test the controls. He will finally give a report. Whether the controls which service organization implemented regarding the services provided to various user entities, getting the point, whether the controls are effective or not, whether we have proper systems, whether we have so and so, getting it. So one auditor we will appoint. So this fellow will come and give a report. There are two types of reports. Type 1 report, type 2 report. These reports are two types. Getting it? Assurance auditor. The assurance auditor of service organization. Actually, what is it called as, under this standard, we call him as service auditor. We call him as what? Service auditor. By the way, we are doing audit of what? Tata Consultancy. In this example, we are doing audit of Tata Consultancy. In the context of SA 402, we call them as user entity. And who are we? We are the auditor of this user entity. The standard calls us as user auditor. We are referred as what? User auditor. So I am the auditor of, BSR & Co, which is user entity. BSR & Co is the auditor, which is user auditor. We are doing audit of TCS, which is user entity. This TCS, for whom we are doing audit of financial statements. This entity outsourced payroll activity to service organization called ADP Incorporation. That service organization has appointed service auditor to give assurance report on how the systems which are implemented by the service organization, controls implemented by service organization, effectiveness of these systems and controls which are implemented by service organizations. So the service auditor is giving assurance report on controls, systems and controls, getting the point, which are implemented at the service organization. Getting the point. Now tell me, once I will sum up right now, very simple. See, you are the auditor of Tata Consultancy. What is the worry that you are having? You are worried about whether the process in which I process the payroll. As a payroll processing company, how do I process the payroll? What systems I follow? What procedures I follow? What standards I follow? What protocols I follow? What controls I implement? You want to know all that. Very simple. I will give you as a service organization, dear all my user entities, Tata, Reliance, whoever it is, getting it. I am doing payroll for every one of you, getting it. And auditors of these companies, please look at this description. I will give a letter. I will give a report. Getting it? I will give a report. In that report, what I will mention? ADP Incorporation is giving a report. In that report, ADP Incorporation is explaining how they process payroll, what systems they follow, what controls they designed and implemented, what policies and procedures they follow. We will give you this entire how we process the payroll. Will give you. You see that report, you will understand how do we process the payroll. If you read that, you will understand, okay, whether payroll is processed correctly or not. Based on this report, you will understand. But as an auditor, you are worried. As an auditor of your Tata, you are worried whether the report given by my company, that how we process, Is it true and fair or not? You are worried. That's why what I did, I implemented certain systems, I implemented certain controls, I implemented so and so to process payroll, right? Whether did I really implement or not, I will appoint an assurance auditor. I will appoint a service auditor. I am the service organization, I appointed service auditor. Whatever I am describing, whatever I am mentioning in the report, is it genuine or not, he will give a report. That's type 1 report. Type 1 report is given by, type 1 report is nothing but it's an assurance report. It's an assurance report by service auditor on service organizations, controls and systems. Type 1 report is a report given by assurance auditor or service auditor on the controls and systems that are designed and implemented by service organization. So service organization is what? ADP. So ADP is telling all the user entities and their auditors, user auditors, look user auditors, we have these controls, we designed these systems, we are following these systems, we are following these procedures, we are following these controls. See, our service auditor, who is also chartered accountant like you, he gave an assurance report that whatever we designed is true and fair. He gave a report. Now, Tata auditors, no, they were not satisfied. Fine, sir, you design and implemented so and so system, you design and implemented so and so policy, you are having so many controls, all that seems fine. But are they operating effectively? Are they operating effectively? In fact, if you recollect audit report chapter 143 subsection 3 clause number I, as an auditor, we have to understand whether internal financial controls are operating effectively or not. So, as an auditor of Tata Consultancy, I am worried about whether these controls are operating effectively or not. So, the service auditor, the service organization, they gave a type 1 report. In the type 1 report, what is it saying? It is saying what systems they implemented, what controls they are following, what policies they are following. And auditor, service auditor is saying, yes, that is true. Whatever company told, it is true. But service auditor is not talking about whether these systems, whether these controls, whether these policies, are they operating effectively? He is not talking. In type 1 report, he is not talking that. He will talk about operating effectiveness of systems, controls, procedures, policies that are implemented by service organization while providing services to user entities. Getting the point? Whether they are operating effectively or not, that will be covered in type 2 report. Type 2 report is type 1 plus operating effectiveness will be tested. Getting it? So, in type 1 report, very simple. Service organization, in type 1 report, what they will give, type 1 report is a report which is given by service auditor. Service auditor is who? ADP has appointed an auditor. For what? Is this auditor doing audit of financials of ADP? No. He is not general auditor. He is an auditor exclusively appointed for providing assurance report on systems, policies, procedures, controls that are implemented at the service organization while providing services to user entities. Getting the point? So he has to give an assurance report. This assurance report is of two types. Assurance report type number 1, assurance report type number 2. Assurance type number 1. Assurance report type number 1. SOC report type number 1. It only talks about whatever systems they implemented, whatever policies they implemented, whatever controls the service organization implemented, the management of service organization will prepare a description. The management of the service organization will prepare a statement of controls, statement of systems, statement of policies. So, service organization management prepare this statement. Whatever points that are there in the statement, are they genuine or not? I will explain. I will give an opinion. If my opinion is talking about the factual accuracy, getting the point? If my opinion as a service auditor, if my opinion, service auditor assurance report opinion paragraph, if the opinion is only talking about whether the description in the paper, whether the description in the document is it true and fair or not, if I'm only talking about description is it true and fair or not, then that's a type 1 report. Suppose in my audit report, I am not only talking about description. Of course, whether the description is right or not, I have to talk in my audit report. Plus, I should also talk about, is the system described? Is the control described? Is the policy described? Is it operating effectively or not? Also, if I have to talk, then that's a type 2 audit report. Type 2 assurance auditors report. I hope you understood what is type 1, what is type 2. Getting it? Now finally, so in type 1, the assurance auditor will talk about, will give opinion on whether the service organization's management description about systems, controls, policies, procedures, is it true and fair or not? Only that. Suppose, are they operating effectively? Which means the assurance auditor tests the controls and test operating effectiveness and accordingly give opinion on operating effectiveness also. Then it's a type 2 report. Able to understand? Now, some clients, as a payroll processing company, I'm a payroll processing. There are my user entities who are outsourcing me payroll activities. Some user entities, they are satisfied with the type 1 report. For them, type 1 is enough. Like what controls I follow? If I describe and the assurance auditor is saying, yes, I am following all these controls. If he says that, yes, that's enough. But for some companies, if I just tell that these controls I follow and auditor also saying that I am following, if this is only mentioned in the report, they are not satisfied. They want to get information on how our systems, procedures, policies, controls are effective. So they want operating effectiveness aspect also. Then my auditor has checked operating effectiveness of all the systems and procedures we implemented. Getting the point? Then that's a type 2 report. So some companies, big companies, for all my big clients, I give type 2 report. For normal clients and all, like I'm a service organization, whoever is normal, small and medium sized clients, I will give them type 1 report. For big entities, I have to give type 2 report. That's the difference between type 1 and type 2. But at the end of the day, whether it is type 1 or type 2, both are assurance auditors report. One is just talking about whether controls are implemented or not. Another one is talking about whether the controls are operating effectively or not also. Type 2 is not only talking about whether controls are implemented. Type 2 is talking about whether the controls are operating effectively in a particular period. Getting the point? So type 2 report is much more beneficial report to user entities and user auditors. I hope, I don't know how many of you were connected from the beginning. Very simple. Tata Consultancy, we are BSR and Co Chartered Accountants. There is a company called Tata Consultancy for whom we are appointed as an auditor for audit of financial statements, which is a listed entity. This Tata Consultancy, one of the major expenditure, significant class of transaction is payroll processing. This payroll processing is outsourced to ADP Incorporation, which is a service organization. So who are the parties? ADP Incorporation is called a service organization. Tata Consultancy, for whom we are doing audit, we call them as user entity. Why? It's a user. Tata Consultancy is a user using services of service organization. So we are the auditor of user entity. So we are called as user auditor. Now service organization has appointed an assurance auditor. We call him a service auditor. Getting the point? Now this service auditor is providing two types of reports. In one type of report, he talks about whether controls are implemented, whether systems are implemented, whether so-and-so systems, whatever described by service organization management, whatever service organization management says, we have these systems, we have those controls, we have these policies, whatever statements they are making, is it right or not, I will talk. Whether are they effectively working or not, also if I talk, then it's a type 2 report. So now ultimately my user auditors, the user auditors of the user entities, they may either ask for type 1 report or they may ask for type 2 report. They don't know. That depending upon their requirement, depending upon the financial reporting requirement, depending upon their, pervasiveness of the item to the financials, they either convince with type 1 or they may request for type 2. Be able to understand. Then, just a minute. So that's it. This is the story. Now fine, you understood the process, what is payroll function, what is outsourcing, all that you understood. Now there is something else called complementary user entity controls. There is another word called complementary user entity controls. Complementary user entity controls are some controls which are implemented by user entity. The controls are responsibility of user entity. User entity is responsible for complementary user entity controls. So what is this complementary user entity controls? These are the controls that user entity has to implement in order to in order to get the best output of the services provided by service organization. These organizations actually called as SaaS. Have you seen this SaaS? Software users, getting it? Software users, getting it? Third party is providing some services called software services. We call them as software as a service, nothing but. Actually, SaaS full form is software as a service. So this organization is providing software services, which software? Payroll software services to which company? User entity. Now these companies, they are providing payroll services to Tata, right? Tata Consultancy, right? Now, in order to provide these services effectively, in order to reap the benefit effectively by TCS, this ADP incorporated, this ADP has given a payroll module. They have given a payroll module to TCS. In this payroll module, TCS has to just enter some basic details. Who are all the employees? What is the salary as per the agreement? They just have to data entry. They just have to enter the data entry task, just getting it. And how many leaves they have taken in that month, what are the overtime updates, what are the bonus and incentives updates. You just, Tata Consultancy have to give these details on a monthly basis. They just have to key in the details, data entry job. Once it is entered, entire payroll processing will be taken care by ADP. Now, for this payroll module, it has a password protection. Only those concerned staff within the Tata Consultancy will have that. Now, this password is a complementary user entity control. This password is a complementary user entity control in the payroll module. So why this password is required? If at all there is no password for this payroll module, if at all there is no proper control on this payroll module, if there is no control, TCS, time to time they can check in this payroll module whether all the employees were paid salaries on time, whether all the employees were paid correctly the salaries or not. TCS staff can open and check happily. But in this entire module, basic information will be given by TCS, processing will be done by ADP. So this payroll module is like an interface, like you have an ICA SSP portal, right? That's an interface between you and ICA. So whatever you want to communicate, you communicate through SSP. ICA, whatever they want to update your information, they update in SSP portal. So SSP portal, whatever is it, that's interface. That here it is what? Payroll module. Getting the point? So this is a complementary user entity control. Complementary user entity control. It is a control for the user entity. It is a user entity control which is complemented to the controls which service organization follows. See, to process your payroll in my ADP organization, I have so many controls, I have so many processes, I have so many systems. To complement these controls, to complement these systems, in order you to get a better benefit, in order you to have a control on what we are doing, we will give you a payroll module. For that, we have certain passwords, user IDs, all that. Only through that, you give all the information, you extract data, all that, whatever you want to do. So that these are called as complementary user entity control. And remember, complementary user entity controls are responsibility of TCS. If TCS do not keep proper password, if they don't maintain confidential the password, if something went wrong in the payroll module, and because of this something went wrong in the payroll function which is processed by ADP is not responsible. And complementary user entity controls, whether these controls are operating effectively or not, who should verify? User entity auditor is there, no? User auditor should verify, because these controls are implemented. These controls are implemented in user entity. These controls are implemented in user entity. Of course, these controls are designed by, designed by service organization, but these were implemented in the user entity. So whether these controls are effectively working or not, user auditor has to check. Suppose now look at this. Service organization is doing payroll function, right? To process this payroll, they have to follow certain processes, standards, systems, rules, regulations, policies, controls. Whether they are operating effectively or not, is your user auditor responsible to check them? No. Whether payroll processes, control systems, which service organization is following, which service organization has designed and implemented, whether they are operating effectively or not, that's the responsibility of service auditor. That's the responsibility of service organization management. Whereas complementary user entity control, whether they are properly safeguarded, whether they are properly designed and implemented, getting it, to have this entire protection, it is responsibility of user entity. And user auditor has to check operating effectiveness. Internal auditors of user entity has to check operating effectiveness. This much depth is not covered in the book also, but I'm just telling you all this. I hope you understood with this example. Bring it. So if you want, you can take a picture. You can take a photo. I know you can't take a screenshot. You can take a photo. You just take your phone and click this photo, and so that if at all you want to recollect later on, you can recollect. I hope now you understood. Okay. By the way, I need to give a summary now. Okay, but standard is not yet over. We have not yet entered into the actual standard. I'm just giving you the importance. So now I am the auditor. PSR and Co. I am the engagement partner. So what is, by looking at this example, what I understood? If I am doing audit of Tata Consultancy, which outsourced one of the important transaction to process to another organization, whether the transaction is properly processed or not, this organization has given a statement. The statement of controls, a statement of systems which they follow, they give a statement. Whether the statement made by that organization is correct or not, type 1 report of the assurance auditor is available. Whether the systems and controls are operating effective or not, type 2 report is there. So as an auditor of Tata Consultancy, I will use type 1 report or type 2 report of the service organization's auditor. Getting it? To depend, to get a reasonable assurance that the payroll processes, the payroll expenditure 1 lakh crore which is accounted in the Tata Consultancy profit and loss account is true and fair or not. Whether it is true and fair or not, how do I decide? I use type 1 report or type 2 report. Simple. This is what SA 402 says. If I directly open SA 402 and say type 1 report is this, type 2 report is this, that's feeding them. That's not logical understanding. If you understand the entire situation, now when you're reading the standard, you understand, you connect with the standard. This is one of the tough standard I can say, because many don't understand actually, because they never have this background understanding. Why the standard is, they don't understand first of all. So, 3402, we have this in syllabus. This is there in module 3. And you know what? This particular standard, I am discussing immediately after 402 standard. Once I complete 402 standard, I immediately discuss 3402, which is an interconnected standard. Getting it? It is actually covered in module 3. Okay, so that's it. So once I finish 402 standard reading, then 3402 I will explain immediately. So what is type 1 report, what is type 2 report, all that we will have more in-depth discussion in 3402. Of course, we already discussed it right now in-depth orally under 402. Getting it? Now, so why delay? So what are the auditor's considerations relating to an entity which is using service organization? So I'm doing audit of an entity. This entity is called as user entity. This entity is called as what? User entity. Who is a user entity? User entity is an entity which is using service. So user entity is an entity that uses service organization, and whose financial statements are being audited. So whatever the financial statements we are auditing, that entity is called as user entity, and this is using service organization services. User auditor is an auditor who audits and reports on the financial statements of user entity. In our example, user entity is what? Tata Consultancy Services. User auditor is what? BSR and Co. Chartered Accountants. Now, service organization. In our example, ADP Incorporation. In our example, service auditor. Let's assume Deloitte. Deloitte is doing SOC audit. They are the one doing SOC audit, and they are providing both type 1 and type 2. Both reports they are providing. Let us assume. Fine. Well, who is a service organization? It is a third party organization. From our client point of view, it's a third party. Getting it? Or it may be segment of a third party organization. It may be a third party, or it may be a branch of a third party that provides services to our user entity that are part of entities information systems to financial reporting. So this entire standard is developed because it is something related to financial reporting. So whatever services service organization is providing to Tata Consultancy user entity, that service is part of information system relevant to financial reporting. Here it is, they are doing payroll process. Payroll is something related to financial reporting, employee benefit expenses. Who is service auditor? Service auditor is an auditor who provides an assurance report. On controls of service organization. So this service organization is providing services to user entities, right? For providing these services, they have implemented so many systems and controls. On these systems and controls, service auditor is giving assurance report. This assurance report can be type 1 report or type 2 report. Now this service auditor is doing audit at the request of service organization. That's why they used at the request of service organization. The service auditor is providing an assurance report on the controls of a service organization. That's how the definitions were drafted. Now you see, when you're reading this definition, when you're reading these definitions, I hope you're able to recollect the example which we discussed. That's why at the beginning of every standard, I take a very big comprehensive example to make you understand the best. So now when you're reading this, the way you understand is different. Getting it? I definitely challenge here. You ask any of your friend who have not listened to my class, especially on 402. You ask him exactly what is the standard dealing with. Not on a proud note, but with a humble note, I'm telling you, they cannot answer. Majority of them, they cannot answer. Because they just mug up the subject. That's a problem. Why they cannot score in audit is because they always mug up. They believe that audit is something you can't understand. See, the fact is they never try to understand. Fine. So now the question is, this particular standard is relevant when our user entity is taking services of a service organization, and that services are related to our user entity information system relevant for financial reporting. If the services provided by service organization are relevant to some financial statement assertion, financial reporting, then SA 402. So services provided by service organization are relevant to the auditors of user entity financial statements when those services and controls over these services are part of our information system, including business processes and relevant to financial reporting. Getting it? If the services provided by service organization, if in our point of view, we are doing audit of the user, Tata Consultancy, and service organization is doing payroll processes. The payroll processing, the controls over the payroll, the services of payroll, they are part of our accounting system. They are part of our financial reporting system. They are obviously relevant to financial reporting. Getting it? Remember, most of the controls at service organization, whatever service organization controls were there, they are likely related to financial reporting. There may be other controls which may be relevant to audit, such as controls over safeguarding of assets. This is one example. Probably I can say this is an example. Getting it? But whatever I have highlighted in green color, only that you read, that's enough. Getting the point? So simple. If at all Tata Consultancy themselves are doing payroll, whether they're doing proper payroll or not, we do check test of controls, right? We do apply compliance procedure, right, as per SA 330. So we apply test of controls. We check controls, whether payroll controls are proper or not. But the problem is Tata is not doing payroll process. Service organization is doing payroll process. Now we are worried about whether the controls of the payroll are proper or not. Now, a service organization's service are part of user entity information system, including related business process. They are relevant to financial reporting. So when service organization services are part of user entity information system and business process, and most importantly, when they are relevant to financial reporting, when the services provided by service organizations are relevant for financial reporting. Remember, only when they are relevant for financial reporting, we apply 402 standard. Suppose Tata Consultancy is purchasing internet services from Geo Communications. They are just purchasing internet services. How internet service is impacting financial reporting? No, right? We just purchase internet service, we pay monthly bill, that's it. So internet service is also a service provided by service organization called telecommunication company. But that is not relevant for financial reporting. So we don't apply 402. When we apply 402, when the services provided by service organization are part of entity's information, our information system, it is one of the important part, and it is related to some business process, and it is relevant for financial reporting. They are relevant. When they are relevant, if the services affect the following items, if the services provided by service organization affect any of the following items, then the services are treated as relevant to financial reporting, and SA 402 will come into picture. So now you see, so a service organization services are relevant to financial reporting if the services provided by them if they are affecting class of transaction, user entity operation which are significant to their user entity financials. Nothing but significant class of transactions. If services provided by service organization are affecting significant class of transactions that affect user entity, then that particular service is relevant for financial reporting, auditor has to get type 1 report or type 2 report on the operating, on the controls of the service organization. Or the service organization the services provided by service organization, if they affect any of the following, nothing but if the services are affecting the procedures within IT and manual system by which our organization transactions are initiated, recorded, processed, corrected, and transferred to general ledger and reported in financials, nothing but if the services provided by service organization, if they are influencing, if they are impacting the way how we initiate a transaction, the way how we record, the way we process, the way we correct, and how it is reported. Suppose if I am buying just a telephone service or internet service, it doesn't initiate any transaction. We just record expenditure entry. That's it. There is no specific process behind that. But payroll, we initiate payroll expenditure, we record it, we process it. Whereas remember, processing everything is done by service organization. Getting the point? But we are reporting that payroll expenditure in financial statements. So if the services provided by service organization is affecting our initiation, recording, processing, transferring to general ledger, reporting in financials, then that service is relevant for financial reporting. We see whatever services provided by all the service organizations for our clients, we don't look at each and every service. We only bother about which services, those services which affect financial reporting mainly, that we will see. And if the services are affecting the accounting records, which are in electronic or manual, if they are affecting supporting information in specific accounts in the user entity financials that are used to initiate, record, process, and report to the user entity transaction. So if they are affecting the IT or manual system by which user entity transactions are recorded and reported, or if it is affecting related accounting records, and it is affecting, the services are affecting how our entity information system captures events and conditions other than transactions that are significant. Suppose if the services provided by service organization are bringing certain events and conditions where we record certain transactions and all, or if it is affecting the financial reporting process used to prepare user entity financials including accounting estimates and disclosures, or if it is affecting the controls, the services provided by service organization, they are affecting the controls surrounding the journal entries including unusual transactions, non-recurring items, non-standard journal entries which are used to record these items, then we say that service organization services are relevant to financial reporting. See, this question aim is very simple. When as an auditor of a user entity, do you feel services provided by service organization are relevant? When services provided by service organization are relevant to financial reporting, so that you apply 402. Getting it? The services provided by service organization are relevant to financial, they are relevant to financial reporting in case if the services provided by them are affecting significant class of transaction, if they are affecting the way we initiate record transaction, if they are affecting the accounting records, if they are affecting the how we are capturing events and conditions, if they are affecting financial reporting process, if they are affecting controls over journal entries, if they are resulting in recording non-routine transactions, extraordinary items like that. Getting it? Okay, fine, understood. So you discover that some services provided by service organization is affecting your financial reporting directly or indirectly. Now what you have to do? So I simply have to evaluate the controls which service organization is following, the controls which they implemented, are they operating effectively or not? I have to evaluate. So the nature and extent of work to be performed by user auditor regarding the services provided by service organization depends upon the nature and significance of those services to the user entity and relevant of those services to the auditor. So when I am concerned about services provided by service, point number 1, they are relevant to financial reporting. Point number 2, how far they are relevant to financial reporting, how significantly they are impacting the financials. Accordingly, how in-depth I think about services provided by service organization, my nature and extent of work that is performed by BSR & Co of Tata Consultancy regarding services provided by ADP depends upon nature and significance of those services to Tata Consultancy services and relevance of those services to this particular financial year audit. So the nature and extent of service, the nature and extent of work to be performed by user auditor of user entity depends upon the significance of services provided by service organization to the user entity. Sometimes in exam, they will give you this statement and they'll ask you to comment, and they'll ask you 4 marks question. They'll ask you the nature and extent of work to be performed by auditor regarding services provided by service organization. They depend upon nature and significance of those services to the user entity and relevance of those services to the audit. How far they're relevant to user entity and how far they're relevant to audit. See, if they're just relevant to user entity but not related to financial reporting, for audit also it is not relevant. If they're relevant to user entity, they're relevant for financial reporting, then they're relevant to audit also. Simple logic. So whether services provided by service organization, are they relevant to audit? Yes, they are relevant to audit if they are relevant to financial reporting. When they are relevant to financial reporting, if they are affecting class of transactions significant, if they are affecting how the transactions are initiated, recorded, if they are affecting accounting records, if they are affecting entity information systems, if they are affecting financial reporting process, if they are affecting journal entries and unusual transactions, unusual journal entries, all the non-standard entries, then these are relevant for financial reporting. If they are relevant for financial reporting, they are relevant for the audit. Now, how much auditor has to work? It depends upon the significance of the service. Simple logic. By the way, for entire this particular standard, first we will discuss it from this particular notes. Then I have made a handwritten notes of this. Long back I made a handwritten notes of this. So then I'll explain in the easiest way in handwritten notes. This is like a summary for you. So I will make a summary for you once we complete this entire text discussion. Getting it? That's it. Now, so what is the objective of user auditor in accordance with 402? Remember, 402 standard is completely designed from whose point of view? Auditor of the financials. I am doing audit of the financial statements of a particular entity which using services of service organization. So in that case, what is the objective? The objective is very simple. When the user entity uses services of a service organization, the objective of the user auditor is to obtain an understanding of what is the service, what is the significance of the service provided by service organization and their effect on the user entity internal control relevant to the audit. So you have to obtain understanding that is sufficient to identify and assess the risk of MMS. Whether service organization systems, controls, policies, are they fine or something can go wrong? Risk assessment you have to do. And once you identify risk and all, you have to design and perform audit procedures responding to those risks. Generally, you don't find in reality because you take type 1 report or type 2 report and you just based upon that you conclude something and go further. So what is type 1 report and what is type 2 report? Both are assurance auditors reports only. Remember, both are assurance auditors report. Assurance auditor report. Assurance auditor is nothing but in this standard they call it a service auditor. Service auditor of service organization. So who is providing assurance report? Who is providing assurance auditor report on systems and controls implemented by service organization? Whatever systems and controls service organization is implementing, no, on that assurance report will be given by assurance auditor. Assurance auditor is called a service auditor of whom? Service organization. So what service organization is saying? The service organization management, they prepared a description. Description means a paragraph, a sentence or a statement or a report which is prepared by management of service organization system, their control objectives, their related controls that have been designed and implemented at a specified date. So type 1 report, no. So the management says as on 1st April, as on 1st September, as on 1st June, as on 31st March. Getting the point? We have implemented these systems for so and so achieving so and so control objectives. For that we implemented so and so controls. Like that, management gave a report. And you know what? The management appointed service auditor. Company, service organization management, they appointed service auditor. He gave a report where he is conveying reasonable assurance that in the service auditor's opinion, the description of the system, control objective, related controls and the suitability of these designs at a specified date to achieve the specified control objectives. So the company, the service organization, ADP and Co, ADP Incorporation, so they prepared, the management prepared a description of whatever the control systems, everything, whatever they implemented on a specified date, they gave a description. Whether the description given by them, is it proven fair or not? Is it correct or not? The auditor is giving an assurance report. But remember, here auditor is only talking about whether whatever management prepared, no description, whatever management description is there, no, regarding services, regarding systems, control objectives, controls that are implemented by service organization, getting it, whether the description is correct or not, whether the controls are suitable or not, only I'm talking. In type 1 report, the assurance auditor is not talking about whether these service organization systems, whether these controls, related policies and procedures which are designed and implemented, are they effective? Are they operating effectively? He is not checking. In type 1, a assurance auditor, when he is giving type 1 report, he will not test any control. He will not test any system. He will not test any policy. He will just check whatever systems which they said implemented, whatever controls which they said implemented, are the really controls existing or not? Are the systems existing? Or I only check existence of it. I don't check the condition. I don't check operating effectiveness. If at all, the service auditor is expected to talk about operating effectiveness, and he has to test all these controls. If at all I have to talk about operating effectiveness, I have to check these controls in a particular period. I will say some 2 or 3 months, some particular period I will take. During that period, whether these systems, controls, are they implemented effectively? Are they operating effectively to achieve the control objectives? See, for every process, there is an objective. Getting the point? For every process, there is an objective. Getting it? Control objective. We call them as what? Control objective. I told you about all this in risk assessment chapter. I hope you have gone through the risk assessment chapter. Actually, I think the risk assessment chapter, I kept it under priority 2 chapter, if I remember correctly. Priority 2. In such a case, you may have not watched it. But control objective, these are all completely CA inter-syllabus. Getting it? Maybe I will take in some other session what is control objective, all that. Okay. Type 2 report. What is type 2 report? Type 2 report also, in this also, management of service organization, they will prepare a description. They will prepare a big statement. In that statement, what are the service organization's system, what are their control objectives, what are the related controls, and how they're designing an implementation at a particular date or a particular period, and they also talk about operating effectiveness, everything. So in this type 2 report, no, management will describe they implemented so and so system for so and so objective, they implemented so and so control, and they have been designed suitably, they are operating effectively, they will claim all that. Now service auditor has to report. Service auditor has to report, okay, with the objective of conveying reasonable assurance that in the service auditor's opinion, the description of the system, controls, related controls, and suitability and operating effectiveness, and description that service auditor has tested the controls and results thereof. So in this type 2 report, no, service auditor will talk about, yes, management has implemented so and so system, so and so control, they are operating so and so, we tested the control and they are operating effectively. What are the tests that we applied, what is the result of the test of controls, and are they operating effectively or not? We additionally talk about this. If we additionally talk about the controls we tested and are they operating effectively or not, then it's a type 2 report which is providing more assurance than type 1. For user auditor point of view, type 2 report will be most useful. Why? Because in type 2 report, I am talking about whether the controls are implemented. I am talking about whether the systems are implemented, whether they are suitably designed or not. In addition, I am also talking about the auditor of the service organization. He is also talking about, are they effectively operating? Are they operating effectively or not? Also, I am talking. That's why this is more useful. Type 2 report is more useful. Getting it? Yeah. So that's about type 1 report and type 2 report. Then finally, write about obtaining an understanding of the services provided by service organization. So funds, okay. So type 1 means what, type 2 means what, we understood. So when services provided by service organization are relevant, we understood. Suppose you decided they are relevant for financial reporting, you understood that type 1 or type 2 some report is required. So fine, then what will you do? So how do you understand? What are the points that you need to understand? If you think services of service organization are relevant for financial reporting or relevant for audit, if you think they are relevant, what points you will check? Remember here, these side headings I have added. Actually, in the actual ICA material, these side headings were not there. Just for your easier understanding, I have added these side headings. Just a minute. Yes. So write about obtaining an understanding of services provided by service organization. So what auditor has to do? When obtaining an understanding of user entity, In accordance with SA 315, when we do a risk assessment of the client, right, the user auditor shall also obtain an understanding of how a user entity is using services of service organization in their operations, including what are the nature of services provided by service organization and what are their significance and effect thereof on the user entity internal control. So like what services user entity is getting, what is their significance, entire this information, the information on nature of service, that is available from sources such as manuals, contract documents, reports by service auditors, SOC reports, type 1, type 2 reports, all that. And auditor has to check nature and materiality of the transactions processed or accounts or financial reporting processes which are affected by service organization. So whatever services service organization is providing, so is how far the transactions that are affected, are they material or not? In certain situations, the transactions processed and the accounts affected by service organization may not appear to be material to the user entity financials, but the nature of transaction processed may be significant and the user entity may determine that an understanding of controls is necessary. User auditor, very simple. Maybe right now my company is a very small company where there are 3 or 4 staff members. Still the payroll is outsourced. The expenditure, if you see the entire payroll, is not significant to the financial statements as a whole. But remember, it's at the end of the entire payroll is outsourced. Today there are only 4 employees, but next year there may be 400 employees. The process is material. Maybe the transaction quantity point of view it is not material, but the process of payroll itself is material. In such a case, I will get an understanding of how the controls are. Now, then I will also check how far the degree of interaction between the service organization and the user entity, how far the user entity and the service organization, the degree of interaction regarding these processes. If the degree of interaction that refers to the extent to which user entity is able to and elect to implement effective controls over processing performed by service organization. Very simple. Service organization is doing processes, right? How far the final output given by service organization is used by the user entity, or is user entity is modifying something else also further. So what is the degree of interaction? For example, a high degree of interaction exists between activities of user entity and the service organization when the user entity authorizes transactions and the service organization processes and do the accounting of those transactions. Means authorization is with the user entity, whereas processing and accounting completely taken care by service organization. Very simple. How much a salary? This may be for purchases. Some companies, they do outsource purchase process, complete purchase process. We just only approve purchases, but entire inspection, receiving the goods, storing the goods completely will be with the service organization. Example, suppose we are selling goods through Amazon warehouse. So whenever we receive an order, we have to approve the customer order for sale. Once we approve, dispatching, packing, returns, delivery, payment, everything Amazon will take care. Accounting, everything Amazon will take care. Example. So how far the degree of interaction? So here in this example, what I told, selling, especially with Amazon warehouse. Here for every sale, I have to interact with the service organization. So for service organization cannot start the process without my authorization. So the degree of interaction is very high. In such a case, as an auditor, my auditor will be very concerned about how far, my auditor will be very concerned about each and every authorization which I am making, so that only after my authorization, the Amazon warehouse will start processing. Getting it? And what is the relationship between user entity and service? Are they related parties or are they unrelated parties? So the nature of relationship between user entity and service organization, including what are the terms of the contracts for the activities that are undertaken by service organization. Once again, I will bring from the beginning once again. So we understand how the standard has been drafted. First, they are talking about some important definition. What do you mean by user entity? What is a user auditor? What is a service organization? What is a service auditor? Then the first point that we discussed is when the services provided by service organization are relevant to financial reporting. If they're relevant to financial reporting, then they're relevant for the auditor. Accordingly, depending upon the significance, the nature and extent of involvement by user auditor regarding services will be decided. Getting it? Now, when the user auditor is understanding the services of the service organization, what points he will consider? I am the auditor of my company called TCS. So TCS is receiving so many services from so many service organizations. What are all that I need to look into I will consider what are the nature of services, getting it, what kind of services they are providing and how far they're affecting financial statements, financial reporting, materiality of these items, degree of interaction between service organization and the user entity, and relationship between them. So I consider all these points, and accordingly, I will decide the risk, getting it, how far it is risk, or how far is it high risky or low risky or medium risky, and accordingly I will look for type 1 report for some service organizations, type 2 report for another service organization. Suppose my Tata consultancy payroll process, they are outsourced into one service organization where for me type 2 report is needed. Another service they outsourced, vendor accounting process also they outsourced. Example, accounting is also outsourced. I may be request only type 1 report depending upon these factors. So remaining question number 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 I will discuss in the next session. Probably it will take another 40 minutes approximately to 1 hour, and in the next session itself I will cover 402 also. I hope until now you understood thoroughly. I hope so. And 2 hours we spent on 402, and I can say in module 3 we will be discussing 3402. In module 3 immediately after 402 I will be discussing 3402, where probably I may finish this within 1 hour 15 minutes. Getting it? Take care. So in the next session I will continue remaining part of the 402. Okay.